Hi everyone. Now that I'm actually back here again, I'm making a new video today. About the topic of learned helplessness and how it actually hinders our recovery from abuse, especially narcissistic abuse. So, um, okay. The reason why I actually was thinking about that was because I was actually thinking about, I had actually had a bit of you know, a dark spot somewhere on my skin. I thought that it was actually something that was potentially dangerous. But then after looking at it, checking out the signs, and then I'm gonna still verify with the doctor, but I kind of came down to the conclusion that I was kind of paranoid, and then I realized, wait, am I learning some form of helplessness or some form of victimhood that I was always rehashing after the narcissistic relationship years ago. Yeah, that kind of got me thinking about what learned helplessness is. Just to go through the concept of learned helplessness, I'm not going to give the long technical explanation, but the concept itself has been talked about in PTSD studies and studies of trauma and also yeah and pain and psychology and psychiatry, and in the book The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, Kolk, Bessel, Bessel van der Kolk. Okay, The Body Keeps the Score. He actually mentioned a particular experiment in which I can't remember the animal. I think it's dogs, if I'm not wrong. They were constantly given monitored electric shocks. Over time, as they got used to the electric shock, no matter how painful it gets, because it didn't really kill them, they didn't want to actually leave the place where they were incarcerated or kept uh, in prison. So despite the fact that they could actually leave when the cages were open. This is something that I think learned helplessness basically boils down to. According to the experiment, once you have actually grown used to the abuse or the so-called pain, your tolerance level actually increases, but at the same time you learn to actually just you just kind of think that it's natural to actually be going through that. One more with real situations of abuse by narcissists or someone who's actually very toxic, you actually end up thinking, you know what, maybe they have a reason for being like that. Maybe it's not really their fault. Maybe it's my fault. Um, or maybe just that the idea that even the idea that if you stay around longer, maybe things will change. Okay, all these are forms of learned helplessness. I think that in common uh, logic among people, we have been talking about the idea of throwing a frog into water that is not actually boiling initially, but that if you actually boil the water bit by bit, the frog will actually not be aware of the pain and the torture you're putting it through. That is actually also very similar to what we have uh, talked about with learned helplessness. In the case of like narcissistic abuse, as you know, the abuse doesn't actually manifest itself at the beginning. I mean, the first few months or weeks, you might not actually see any form of abuse. I mean, the narcissist can be actually um, very nice to you. Yeah, very nice, very kind, very loving and affectionate to you. But once that so-called honeymoon period, that love bombing phase is over, that's when they actually start being really mean. And I mean, for everyone, that period might actually differ. But I think that I mean, in general, if you were just to compare that to the analogy of the frog in the boiling water, that's pretty much the case. I mean, the frog doesn't know when the water is going to start becoming scalding hot, And then for us, the victims and the survivors, we don't have the idea either. We were just like, buying into the illusion that the narcissist was being kind to us and being loving and affectionate to us at the beginning. So but of course, as time goes by, we know that eventually that it was all not really that good. And when things start going down under, even then we will be in a state where we are kind of bonded to that person or abuser. We just kind of think that maybe things aren't that bad. That itself is again how learned helplessness actually manifests itself. So okay, so the question that I was thinking about learned helplessness is actually the how actually narcissists and toxic personalities actually use it. I think that if you were to just go down to the patterns in which narcissists and other cluster, especially cluster B personalities, actually program their victims, I believe that they're actually intentional in most of the time, and although they don't exactly admit it, or they aren't really fully aware of it, they do operate by the particular pattern of their disorder and by their traits and nature. So there is a very predictable pattern actually about the way they tend to adopt learn helplessness of the victims to their advantage. So okay, let me just go through the few things that we've been talking about. In psychology they talk about the three different phases of narcissistic abuse, which are the love bombing phase, the so-called honeymoon phase, and then the evaluation phase, which is the point when the abuse starts showing, and then the final stage being the discard phase. And of course, there's a possibility that in many cases that the discard phase is not just the end. People can go through like certain like cycles of the three phases, and sometimes they can actually it can sustain it for actually like years and years. So I know one thing, I had a friend who was in a relationship for 7 years, 7 years or more than that. Actually, he was discarded by his that ex then for like a period of time. And then I asked him, why are you all both back again? I just got got wind of the fact that he admitted to me that they were back. I don't really not interfere in my friends' relationships and everything, but at that point in time I knew that that particular partner of my friend was actually very narcissistic from the vibe I get. So the thing is, I just told him, why are you, when your ex tells you that 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 he wants to actually go and experience the world, as in, sleep around, why are you so adamant about keeping the relationship? And of course my friend didn't want to believe me, and was like, my friend was actually going around, not going around, but just thinking, oh, there's a chance of that relationship possibly being salvaged through negotiation and through some more years of staying around. So I was like, wow, it was a relationship that actually, that discard phase ended in 2016, but then continued into 2021. After that temporary the discard, my friend got back into it again, and then it lasted until 2021. And then of course, my advice, my warnings were falling on deaf ears, so it didn't help. Okay, but back to what we have talked about in terms of love bombing and devaluation and also discard, and how narcissists and toxic cluster B personalities use that idea, or that form of learned helplessness. Essentially, okay, we know that in the case of most narcissists and cluster B personalities, they never treat their victims and their targets badly at the beginning. Very, very rarely. They're always very nice. But because of that, that is why it actually becomes more dangerous, because all the victims, like me included, we all thought that these people meant could possibly be the best person for us, or I mean, not be a romantic relationship, but it could be just also be a friendship, family relationship. So, and especially when we are so used to thinking that the kind of treatment that we get from other people, like even you treatment is just normal because of something in our families or in our childhood patterns of abuse and treatment. Uh, we get used to thinking that maybe there might be some possibility of change. So yeah, and of course I think that most narcissists and cluster B personalities, they are very aware of our weaknesses. The first time when we meet them, and they will always be asking us so much and so many questions about our background, but they withhold from us their life, of course, and the personal details, and sometimes they tell us sob stories which are not always that true, but it's made to manipulate us. Yeah. So learn helplessness is when we end up getting bonded to the abuser. There are different ways in which we end up getting bonded. It could be through sex. Yeah, sex is one of them. Even if it's not sex, there's this the idea of the trauma bond. The fact that we actually don't really like the person, but at the same time we cherish like very very euphoric and very positive memories of certain moments that we had with them, which is where the love bombing comes in again, because as we know, the love bombing phase makes us think all the best in terms of the fantasies and the illusions we cherish and entertain of the narcissist. But of course, they don't really last for long, as we know. And so okay, the next question I was thinking about as well, other than how they use it, how the narcissist actually uses learned helplessness of the victim, is also about the effects of learned helplessness on us as victims. As you all know, the learned helplessness is not something that actually takes it doesn't resolve itself in like a day or an hour or whatever. It's not something that is like resolved by popping a pill. These are coping mechanisms that we have since young, and especially if we have gone through any kind of traumatizing or eventful experience, that's painful or challenging during your childhood or even your youth. The tendency to actually stay on and desire some form of affirmation from people who are not actually good for you is especially strong. I think that one effect of learned helplessness is the idea that what if I leave, and the other half or the other person actually changes for the better with someone else. This is like really ridiculous, but I mean we all actually entertain that the idea is that lie that maybe the problem was actually not exactly with the person, but with the narcissist, but with ourselves. We think that maybe it's just that we didn't stay long enough, and then things that would have changed if we stayed long enough. I know this is something that will make some people feel very triggered, but I think a lot of us cherish that lie, and that is not very helpful for us. I still remember that time when I was discarded 6 years ago. I actually remember that I was thinking, after the discard, I said, I mean, people were saying, why don't you just, delete and block and just move on, and you have so much that you have to be, focus on, like your new job, your new life, trying to get back your money and everything, and also possibly making new friends too, and then yeah, just coming back to Singapore especially. So and yeah, I mean, but I think that at that point in time, I was in that state of learned helplessness, and from that point, at that point in time, I was actually even thinking about the narcissistic acts. Like, oh, what if if I had stayed on, maybe what if it was like if I just leave like that, maybe wouldn't that particular ex lose a chance of changing with my help? You see how ridiculous it gets. I thought that I would be the one to change the other person, or I mean, it doesn't make sense, and um, it's a very strange thing from my perspective now that I come to think about it, because I mean, we know that narcissists never really change, and they are always shifting all the blame to other people. Uh, I mean, what makes us think that they would change if we had stayed around longer? In a way, it's us projecting our own, positive illusions and fantasies onto them, because we want to believe that other people are possibly like us, and that maybe they could just be like us. They could be just self-aware, empathetic, and also that maybe they still have a fragment or figment of some human soul in them, which is not true of narcissists, as we know, because they don't have any compassion, they don't have any conscience or empathy. I mean, they have actually cognitive empathy, in that they know what they're doing is wrong, but they are aware of it, but emotionally they can't feel your pain. Yeah. So okay. So the question is that after, I mean, now that we know what learned helplessness is, and what kind of effects that it actually makes, I mean, what kind of effect it has on us, that it makes us stay longer in a relationship that is abusive than we ought to, or that it even just makes us cling onto the hopes of an improving relationship that never really existed, even when we have left the relationship or when we have discarded the narcissist. It actually bonds us to the abuser. The question is, how do we actually unlearn it as victims and survivors? Because I mean, you don't want to actually live your life into your later years just constantly reminiscing, having nostalgia for that narcissistic relationship, which was actually a very abusive relationship. I mean, you don't want to really romanticize it as well, as saying, oh, you know what, he or she was maybe just angry with me for some reasons, whatever. We tend to gaslight ourselves, especially because of this state of learned helplessness, or we just end up thinking, you know what, maybe we can't end up having a better life after we leave, or I mean, I think that is very important to realize that at the end of the day, uh, no one is really responsible for our happiness, but ourselves. I know that this is really really hard to stomach as a lesson, but our attempts to actually make someone else happier, I mean, they don't actually always necessarily make us happier. Um, to be happy with ourselves, we have to actually be the ones who do so, who make ourselves happy, and it's not selfish to actually take care of ourselves. I mean, how many times have we actually tried so hard to actually make that other narcissistic person, be a friend, a partner, a loved one, a family member, um, how hard did we once try to actually please them, and then only to actually end up having them berate us, criticize us, ostracize us, mock, ridicule us? I mean, I believe it's just more than once. Yet we keep on repeating that situation in different forms. We keep on giving them chances. We keep on telling ourselves maybe it will get better. Maybe they will start realizing their mistake. Maybe. All these forms of maybe, the perhaps, the hypothetical situations we create in our heads. Um, there are examples of the learned helplessness repeating itself and rehashing itself until we learn that lesson. So yeah, so it begins with us to actually stop that in our selves, to change that mindset, to start realizing that we are not responsible for someone else's happiness, and then on top of that, we are also responsible for our own happiness. We cannot actually make ourselves happier all the time by trying to make someone happy, and neither can we actually condone abuse, especially when it gets to the stage where it's constantly repeating itself. So okay, so I hope that this helps everyone, and if you have any questions and or any comments, you can just leave them down in the box below. I'll actually yeah, move on now to do something else, and have a good rest of the night or the day. Yeah, it's actually pretty dark, as you can tell. Yeah, I should leave soon. I just came here to actually do some recording and also to take a walk around. But I haven't been walking around much, and yeah, and but very thankfully, this week, my schedule is actually clearing up, and I think I should prepare for some very important stuff, such as some exams and everything. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, bye bye.